talking about politics has actually become very difficult, and I think a huge reason it's become very difficult now is because of the nature of the algorithm, right? I think I've said this before, but these algorithms are not into nuance. The algorithm has shifted a lot in the past, I think, 5 years. So nuance is sort of like not really a thing with the algorithm. And I like to talk when I have political conversations, I like to do it with nuance, and algorithms don't really support that. Often too, because of the nature of algorithms, we are preaching to the choir. And I'm not, when I say the algorithm, I'm talking social media, but I'm talking also media. Folks are often just fed things that reinforce what they already think in terms of news media, in terms of social media. And that is really frustrating. And so, and I think that environment has facilitated the unprecedented legislative attack on LGBTQ folks that we're witnessing in the United States right now. And so that context, I think, is important. The nature of propaganda around healthcare for trans youth, how that propaganda is not just online, it's in Supreme Court confirmation hearings, it's everywhere. And so now policies are being put in place that are targeting trans young people, and it's kind of unbelievable. It's insane. These bills are being challenged in the courts. I know that the ACLU is suing the state of Alabama, my home state, for their recent anti-trans legislation. And we'll see how these things do in the courts. But I think that the psychological and emotional toll that it has taken on me, and I, as privileged as I am, I know that is taking a psychological and emotional toll on our community as a whole. There is support and there's love, and I like to focus on that. So I like to both and it. There is a tremendous amount of, I wouldn't be where I am today if there weren't gatekeepers and people in power who are willing to give me a chance and give me an opportunity. And we're seeing more trans people visible than ever, and that's because people are willing to give these trans people opportunities and give them a chance and give us a chance. And I think because we're so visible now and our lights are shining and they're so beautiful, people are afraid of that light. People are afraid of the light that trans people are bringing to the world, and so they want to do this sort of misinformation propaganda to try to dim our lights, to try to make us not exist. It's deep when I see us being sort of used as political pawns, and it is not about the humanity of trans people. But I always like to think about all the young people, specifically the trans young people who have sat before state legislatures and said who they are and shown their humanity, and legislators have still passed dehumanizing legislation when they've met the young people and met their parents. And is their world, and what I want to invite us to do, if there is a space for this on this internet, to highlight the humanity of trans people. That is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in us as human beings, and I'm interested in us having bodily autonomy. We are in a really interesting, devastating, catastrophic place legislatively. Violence against trans people continues to increase. It does not, diminishing in this context. So we must continue to let our light shine. A lot of because it's so traumatizing what's happening in the world, a lot for me has been about continuing to be visible, trying to be excellent, and trying to be my very, very best, and highlighting the excellence and beauty of other trans people. And we have to continue to do that in the face of all of this. And for everybody out there who knows, if you're in Alabama or Arkansas or all these states that are targeting trans people, if you know trans kids, trans young people, show them love. Let them know that they are lovable and that you love them. Reach out and say, I love you to someone trans in your life, to someone LGBTQ in your life. Reach out to somebody who, you know, is working class in the world, who is struggling to pay their rent or pay their bills. Reach out to the people in your life and let them know that they are worthy, that they are human, because so much of what is all this does is dehumanizes folks. We are still human and we're still beautifully human. You know, I'm angry about this, all of this, and I'm trying not to, you know, it's deep, you know, being a Black woman and being, you know, infuriated, but trying to sort of, you know, come into the world without that. You know, I've internalized that thing around not appearing too angry, and but we certainly have a right to be angry now, and I certainly am. I also want to be a beacon of love and light, and so even as I'm angry and frustrated and saddened by and impressed too, I have to say I'm impressed by how well conservatives have done this culture war thing, how relentless they are, and just how successful they've been. But the success comes in the dehumanizing of entire groups of people, and you know, denying history, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, but I don't want to focus on them. I want to, you know, I've been doing this on my YouTube channel as well. I started doing a reading series. There's going to be another video coming soon. Me reading some of my favorite excerpts from Bell Hooks, Bell Hooks' work. And, you know, she talks about moving from the margins to center in terms of how we think about ourselves. You know, she talks about it in the context of feminist theory, but I think for anyone who's marginalized, right, and who's been sort of dehumanized, and spoken about in dehumanizing ways and marginalized, and that we can center ourselves and our perspectives. And I think it's really, really important that is what we do. That, like, yes, all of this stuff is going on out there in the world, but how do we center our humanity and center love? I think this is a question that I would have for left-leaning people in general, whether you're trans or not. How do we set our own agenda instead of responding to the agenda that people on the right are setting? Because that's what we're doing when we're responding to critical race theory, when we're, you know, unfortunately, the reality is like we have to respond because there are actually policies being put in place. But then how do we begin to set the agenda and set the conversation, right? I think that is becomes the question. And I think for people who are left-leaning, that we have to really begin to imagine what coalitions of working class people look like across gender, race, and all of sort of the divides, right? Because so much of this culture war stuff is really about, you know, the rich getting richer, right? It's being used as a distraction, but unfortunately this distraction is actually having real life consequences in the lives of trans people, of people of color, of working class people. So, I mean, for example, in Alabama, there is one of the biggest at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, one of the biggest clinics for transgender healthcare for youth in the entire southeast region of the United States is in Alabama. And now with the new law that exists in Alabama that criminalizes gender affirming care for trans youth, all the trans folks all over the southeast no longer have access to healthcare. And gender affirming healthcare, which is life-saving, which every reputable medical institution, the American Society of Pediatrics, the American Medical Institute, all has said that this care is necessary, it's safe, and none of that matters in the face of all this propaganda. So that's happening. That's happening.